Welcome back to the Science of Wellness. Today, I'm joined by a guest who's right at the cutting edge of personalized health, performance, and longevity. So Wez Pooley is the performance director of MUHDO Health, a DNA and epigenetics testing company, helping people unlock powerful, science-backed insights into their health and biological age. He has over 20 years of experience in the fitness and educational space and a career that spans professional rugby, elite athletic coaching, and national educator roles. Wez brings a rare combination of scientific knowledge and real-world experience. In today's conversation, we'll dive into the future of wellness through the lens of genetics and epigenetics. We'll also explore how biological age tracking works, and then we'll uncover what truly personalized health means in today's world. We'll also touch on what most people get wrong about anti-aging, then also the business of wellness in a noisy market, and some practical actions you can take right now to start optimizing your body and your mind. So let's get into it. Wez, welcome on the Science of Wellness.
Thank you very much. Lovely to meet you.
So let's start off with, what does wellness mean to you personally? And how has your definition evolved over time?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, wellness for me is really important. I suppose from a athletic background, because I'm an ex-international professional sportsman myself. I played for my country with rugby sevens. Actually, my first tournament was actually Cape Town back in the 2000s. I give it away my age slightly. But yeah, wellness is really important. You know, if your athlete is not performing to the right level or something's not going right within their day-to-day, which is how I see their wellness, whether it's they haven't slept well or they haven't eaten well or their training is overloaded or they've had some mental stress or some problems at home or they've broken up with a girlfriend or whatever it may be, that can obviously cause some serious problems. So the key here is to look at why wellness is important to everyday people as well. So it's not just the athlete. Obviously, the athlete's important from that perspective because obviously that's the kind of a background I've came from and this is how it evolved over time. But wellness in everyday people today is really, really important because I don't think we take into account all the stresses that people have in their lives and what they need to do to then prioritize their wellness themselves. I think kind of wellness then gets taken to one side and people don't look after themselves in the appropriate ways. I've been through periods where literally I stopped exercising because my work was so busy and I had targets to meet and KPIs and things like that, which basically meant I lost part of me as a person because that's me. That's what I do. I'm a very active person. I've played sport at elite level for a long period of time. So yeah, wellness for me is really, really, really important. So from an athletic perspective, when I worked at professional international level as a strength conditioning coach and return to play specialist, we basically did a wellness report every single day with the athletes because we believed before they went into any environment of activity or just coming into the environment, we needed to know as best as possible what state they were in before you then put them under any undue pressure or exertion. So we would do a report that would give things like, what length of time did they sleep? How long did they sleep? What was the quality of sleep? Do they feel fatigued? Have they had a busy day? Have they eaten correctly? Have they not eaten correctly? Have they taken vitamins and minerals? Have they taken their supplements? Are there any problems at home? Are they mentally stressed about anything? Are they injured? So there's a list of kind of areas, and we basically scored each area, and the player would then score, and then we would give them a score out of 800, and then that would basically link to a scale of green, yellow, orange, red, and depending on where they sit in that grid would then depend on that day at that time what they would potentially do. So they may come in the morning and we wouldn't let them do any training because we believe they haven't slept well or they haven't done something properly. So we wanted to put them through some recovery, or we wanted them to go and eat, or we wanted to put them in the sleep pod or something. But then in the afternoon, we'd got them to where we need to go on to pitch or go into the gym or go and do some activity based off kind of what was on that day. So yeah, again, wellness for me is a very important part. And I think people overlook that and don't kind of take the simple steps away. I'm always about simple steps day by day, looking at how I can create an action plan for someone. So if something isn't going right, what can you give them to help them make the right choices to then make those implementations? And it could just be one thing a day, one thing a week. could be the thing you focus on, whether it's just drinking water, whether it's taking vitamins and minerals, whether it's trying to de-stress, whether it's going for walks, whether it's reading a book, whether it's meditating, listen to a podcast, whatever. There's millions of things people do and everyone's different. So it's finding that out about people as what is important to them to obviously help them with their wellness.
I absolutely love that you look at the holistic aspect of wellness. And then, especially when you say the one thing a day, because I've seen time and again that as soon as you give a wellness report to someone or a health report and you start telling them this and this and this is wrong, but now how do you start fixing that? And then there's so many interventions, lifestyle or medical, that you can start implementing, but it's totally overwhelming. So it's amazing that you're saying the one thing a day, because that really does work. And then later you can start stacking onto that. Okay, so then I want to go over to my next question for you. And that is, because you've been working at the intersection of science and tech and business, and you have this sports background and performance background, what excites you the most about how health is currently evolving?
Yeah, I mean, there's, you say, you probably hit the nail on the head. There's obviously a number of different things within the business world, the technical world, and obviously the science world, which now kind of are coming together, especially around the technical world when you're looking at things like AI and what applications can now do. So basically, everyone spends all their time on one of these, a mobile phone, and what your mobile phone does do now, it knows a lot about you. People probably aren't aware that, like, for example, even if you don't turn your tracking on, it's tracking you, it's listening to you, it knows a lot about you that potentially don't know. So the way to obviously help people, and again it kind of links back to the wellness, is the more you know about someone, the more is easier to help someone design that plan to help them be healthier. Or as in what MUHDO trying to do, we're trying to prevent things ever happening. Can we mitigate risk is kind of what we're trying to look at, is can you stop things or push things as far out as possible so people live as healthy as possible for as long as possible? Because unfortunately, negative things happen, but can you push them out so that they happen at a later date? But there's some really exciting times coming on. There's lots of companies now working in this space, some really interesting science, and there's always new science coming out, and by some recognized universities and research companies, and it's now using that information to basically make it consumer friendly is probably the easiest way of explaining it. How does it impact people on a day-to-day basis? Because if you can't use it in the real world situation, then there's no use in it. And that's what we kind of do from a research perspective. You don't want to put too many strict rules in place when you're trying to do research with people, because that's not how people live day to day. You want to look at doing research in the real world scenario. So if people are eating a certain way, they're eating a certain way, but does this or this change? The biological age is kind of what we look at, and the rate of which we age. That's how we kind of we use and measure whether improvements are occurring. And obviously, I'm sure we'll come on that a little bit later. But yeah, measuring basically how things occur and what things are happening is then how you make change. As simple as that, because you have a metric you can work from.
Right. Okay. That actually leads me to my next question, which is about personalized health. And now we're seeing that everything is shifting away from this group aspect of, let's say someone has a chronic condition, but we don't treat the group the same anymore. Everything is starting to become more personalized. So how do you see the role of personalized health actually changing the future of how we look at wellness and fitness and preventative medicine?
So basically, when you're looking at personalized health, obviously there's lots of different ways to personalize health. Obviously, we're in the genetic space, so I'll explain it from kind of that perspective. There are different ways of looking at your genetics. One is called DNA. So I'll do a quick genetics 101. Your DNA is fixed from the day you're born to the day you die. So very simple. It doesn't change. So the information you get is basically what we call your blueprint to your body. The other way of explaining it is the cards you've been dealt. And then you have the second part of testing that we offer, which is called epigenetics. And all our testing is done very, very simply through saliva. We basically spit into a tube. Sounds very lovely. Epigenetics is basically how your genetics is affected by your lifestyle and environment. So keeping it very, very simple is, how does your lifestyle and environment affect your genes? The easier way of explaining this again is if your DNA is the cards you've been dealt, your epigenetics is how you play those cards. And if you look at your epigenetics as like a dimmer switch, you turn genes up, you turn genes down, and dependent on your genetics, and depending on your lifestyle and your environment will depend what genes you need to turn up, which ones you need to turn down to basically make you as efficient and effective as possible in wellness and health. This sometimes becomes confusing because people think an athlete is healthy, whereas because they're looking at the looks, they're going, well, you look really healthy, so you must be really healthy. But the argument be is why were some of the top athletes collapsing on a pitch in an event? There's underlying issues. Just because you look good doesn't necessarily mean you are healthy. So we use basically chronological age against biological age, which is your internal age. So if I'm 35, sake of argument, but I'm 45 biologically, it shows my rate of aging is 5 to 10 years faster than what it should be. And we as a company are providing you, backed by science, recommendations that show you what you can do to make those changes. And obviously, like I said to you, the metric, as we discussed earlier, is really important. That metric to show that you are aging too fast is the kind of behavioral change that you then use to then do what we discussed earlier, put one simple thing in place week by week. Don't try and change 10 things in week one. Go, okay, what is potentially the most impactful thing, or what's the simplest thing that I can do in week one? It may be simple as drinking water. That's really simple. It may be I can actually cut out coffee, or I can actually start taking vitamins and minerals, which are very, very important. And I don't think people understand how important vitamins and minerals are to the body. And that's how real personalization starts coming into play with genetics, because genetics literally covers off what vitamins and minerals you should take, what supplements you should be taking. And they're basically in code for the body. They are the spark plug to the body. Another analogy we use is you're like a car. We're a machine at the end of the day, and we work by basically putting the right things into the body to make sure the body works efficiently and effectively as possible. So simple as when we eat carbohydrates, fats and protein, it's like putting petrol in a car. You're putting petrol in the car so the car moves. If there's no petrol in the car doesn't go anywhere. We service the car on a yearly basis. So we make sure that the car's serviced, it's looked after, and it knows you may need this to be done. You may need that to be done. You may need this to be done. And then you have your MOT. Your MOT is obviously where am I? It's my metric. I am healthy. I'm not healthy. Therefore, I need to do things. I need to go away, do something to be healthy. And then finally, the vitamins and minerals are the spark plug to the car. If they're not in there, the rest of the car doesn't do what it needs to do. And that's why vitamins and minerals, and probably people have heard of nutrigenomics, which is basically nutrition around genetics, which is really important. Your diet is so important to your body. And again, there are lots of different diets that people do, and there's no right or wrong answer to say you can't do a carnivore diet, you can't be a vegan, you can't be a vegetarian, you can't be a pescatarian, you can't eat this, you can't eat, everyone's different. Everybody makes up differently, and everyone has different goals and aspirations. Everyone wants to live their life differently. So again, it goes back to the wellness of, you want to live well and you want to live healthy. So live that life in the remits of your genetics. Again, if you're an athlete, you're potentially going to go over and above that level for a period of time, because you're trying to exert the body to achieve something that, very minimal people in the world can potentially achieve when they're top of their game. But those stresses on the body cause high inflammation, high stress, and cause health problems, injuries, those risks, therefore making athletes not necessarily healthy. I'm not saying every athlete is unhealthy. I'm just saying that the top athletes are pushing their body so hard that they have periods where they break or they get ill and they don't look after themselves. So around the personalization piece, obviously you've got other testing you can do. So you've got the standards, day-to-day basic testing that you could do from a doctor or from a medical company, but also you've got like blood tests. There's lots of different tests you can now do. You can do bone scans, body scans. So there's lots of stuff that you can use to then hopefully personalize things to you. And that's really, really important, that basically with everything we can do, we can personalize it to you. But obviously your body is made up of your genetics. So if you do that, at least it points you in the right direction to give you information about yourself to help you go down the right pathway for your health.
That is great. I just want to come in with, you mentioned now that you played rugby sevens, and I know the nutrition for rugby players is insane what you guys need to eat to stay fit and healthy and 100% performance ready. So I was actually watching the Vuelta a Catalunya yesterday for the cycling, and McCrossan, the commentator, mentioned how much carbs each cyclist need to take in and when. And it is insane amounts, and I couldn't understand it and I couldn't believe it, because you keep on hearing now from different scientists, different influencers on health and wellness, that carbs are bad. But carbs aren't bad. It depends on what you are doing with it. Do you actually need it? So totally understand where you say it depends on you as a person, what type of diet you need to follow. You gave a great summary for DNA and epigenetics. So what was the most surprising thing that someone discovered when they saw their DNA and their epigenetic health reports for the first time?
Yeah, I suppose it's very interesting. The kind of the feedback we normally get from people is that they actually see things, because obviously most people don't do a genetics test until they're probably 18 or above. Really, they don't know about it, or they don't have the financial money to be able to buy one, or that it's not something to do. Obviously, parents now are doing a lot of testing. Now is growing within children, so we have a lot of parents now obviously going, I want to test my child because it's helped me so much. So if I knew what I know now, 20 years ago, I would be in a different position and different place. So if I can do that for my child, I'm going to do that. So the kind of key kind of stuff that comes back is normally people actually recognize that potentially they know caffeine causes them problems, or they know they have a gut health problem, or they know they have an issue with intolerances. And obviously the test picks it up. So it's great to see that when they see it, they go, that's great, because it's me. It literally shows it's me. And then that's one of the first buy-ins you then have from a person to go, well, now I can start reading the rest of it because I've actually seen this is me, which is a great aspect. Obviously, sometimes some of the surprising things are people kind of going, I didn't realize I'm 10 years older than what I should be, or I didn't realize I'm under my chronological age. So, I mean, again, it's very hard to have that conversation because everyone's different and everyone has a different kind of spark to why am I doing the test? I think sometimes it's more about why have I done the test in the first place? There's always a reason behind doing a test. So what was that reason? Was it I can't sleep properly? I get fatigued all the time. I feel low in mood. I have X, Y, and Z problems. I get injured all the time. I get ill all the time. And that's why genetics is so useful and powerful, because it helps you understand all that information. And then from the information that we provide, which is all, as again, backed by science, we have lots of research partners like King's College London. We've got some really good medical specialists within our team that basically, with our science, help us then explain it in simple, basic terms to someone to say, you have a deficiency here. This is what you need to take, and this is how it will impact you. And then hopefully from there, use the epigenetics to kind of measure that process as you go forward.
Okay, yes, that makes complete sense. And I'm so glad that you say that everything is science-backed, because it doesn't help if you give someone something and it's not even science-backed and it's feeling what the problem is. That's amazing. Also, you've worked with elite athletes and corporate clients. Now, what are some of the most powerful use cases you've seen for using DNA and epigenetic insights to improve your performance?
Yeah, so obviously with the elite athletes, we'll start there, is they're actually they don't know what they don't know. It sounds very strange to say that, but basically a lot of athletes don't actually know what they need to do. They're normally following instructions, no different than, I'm looking at weight management as a normal person. I go to a personal trainer, to try and help me. I'm following guidance from someone that, I trust, or I need to try and start trusting. So the area of an athlete is they don't potentially know where their deficiencies are. They don't know what they should be doing. Again, it goes back to this personalization speech, where, like, obviously social media is very powerful, but also has its problems, where people go, that person looks like that, they must know what they're talking about. I'm now going to do everything that they do, or I'm going to eat everything they eat, or I'm going to go and do all these different things, because obviously social media has that sort of power. But it doesn't mean that it's the right thing for you to do, which is why, again, going back to testing yourself, you then have the data on yourself to then obviously personalize yourself to then help you improve. Obviously we've had athletes who have improved, PBs, have got world records, who have been world's strongest man, world's strongest woman. We've had lots of athletes that have done that, not just because of genetics. We're not taking away the fact of the hard work they put in and everything they did before they obviously did genetics, but obviously the genetic pieces actually help them continue. It may have helped them stop getting injured. Again, it goes back to why have I done the genetic test? What is the genetic test telling me that helps me on my day-to-day journey or to achieve in a competition that may do it? And that's where obviously it kind of differs in the corporate world, because the corporate world looks at it slightly differently. The corporate world as an employer you're looking at now, and it's changing in the world a lot more now. Whereas how do I help my employees be healthier? And the problem is at the moment is that the transitions happen in certain countries, but not so much in, I would say, the UK at the moment, and potentially probably South Africa is probably the same, where people don't want to pay for the testing at the present moment in time as an employer. They want to pay what is cheap to say, I've ticked a box to say I'm covering health. So I'm covering health because I have this platform or this program in place. And therefore, because I have that in place, it covers off what I need it to cover off. Therefore, I've done something right because I've ticked a box, and on a sheet of paper, if someone looked at it from the HR going, I've done this job, and therefore I am now helping my staff. However, when you look at some of the stats around the health thing, you find that actually people in the employees, you look at less than 10% of people actually take that opportunity. So we're going through that now, where trying to get people to understand doing a basic health test where you get screened and you get told your BMI and your body weight, it doesn't inform you what to do. It doesn't tell you anything. And BMI is rubbish anyway, because me as a professional rugby player, I was clinically obese. And I wasn't big. I mean, the guys now that play rugby are absolutely monsters. It's ridiculous how big some of those guys are and what they actually are able to achieve at the body sizes that they are. But those metrics are just so poor now that, and people still go back to them going, well, your BMI is wrong. You go to a GP and you go, well, you're outside your BMI. I mean, that's just, it's just a load of rubbish. It's like a subjective number now. Whereas obviously the testing now that's in place and that is available, yes, it costs money. But again, the problem in the UK is the NHS is free. Well, you go to somewhere like Thailand, you pay for you pay for it, which is why they don't have as many issues as, it's a real simple thing is these people don't have many problems. We have lots of problems. What's the difference in the health system? These guys are happy to pay. We're not happy to pay. So how about we start making people pay even to go to the emergency? If you go because you've done something, you have to pay to go. Otherwise you don't go, kind of, and it will stop potentially people going because they either don't want to go. Like I won't go to a doctor unless I'm literally kind of falling apart, because that's just the way I am. I'm very fortunate that I'm luckily, not just through my genetics, but because I've done my genetics and I live the lifestyle I have, I don't get ill. Literally, I may be in 10 years time, I might eat my words and go, well, actually you have an underlying issue, and and that's come back and bites me in 10 years time. But, I've never taken a day off work in my life because I don't get ill, because I look after myself in my way, not in, I should copy everything that Wez does, because you're not Wez, you're someone else. So there are simple basic fundamentals you should follow, but everyone, again, it is different and everyone is personalized. I mean, the corporate world, again, is, and the way I explain it in the corporate world is look at it as if you are, as we go back to these issues, what is your problem? That's how the genetic test will help you find the problem. And then I can explain why a genetic test will help, whether it's an MSK issue, so a musculoskeletal issue, whether it's a fatigue issue, whether it's a cognitive decline issue, or a memory fog, brain fog kind of issue. There's lots of different issues we have, whether it's a gut health problem. The genetics will help you understand that and then guide you down the right route. So, as I say, I'm not trying to sell genetics, but obviously that's what I do, and that's what I believe in heavily, that it will really change people's lives and really, really help. And for the limited small amount of money that you have to pay to get one, I believe it's very, very worth that.
That is amazing. And I totally agree with what you said about like the NHI and how that works. So here in South Africa, we are literally, or it looks like we are more, I'm guessing now on the splits of it, let's say 85, 15%. So 85 is public health and 15% is private health. Now, what you just said about the more public health system, they are more unhealthy, because the private health, you actually need to pay for it and you get to see your health improve and you know exactly what to do, when to do it. So that is definitely something that I would love to discuss with you in a future conversation. I would love to get your opinion on the UK versus South Africa, and then possibly something with another country as well. That will be an amazing conversation. Okay, so Wez, then with MUHDO, let's talk about business growth. So, what's been one of the biggest lessons that you've learned in scaling your science backed wellness company in an industry that is already noisy, and there's so many companies trying to get into the market already? And then how do you feel that MUHDO is being set apart from all these other health tech companies?
Yes, again, it's a very interesting question. And obviously, the perspective of the health industry is very different. Obviously, I sometimes draw it back to kind of comparing like shoes, because obviously, you've got Nike, you've got Puma, you've got Adidas, you've got, Gwen, you've got all these brands of shoes, no differently you do with, whether it's genetics or whether it's just health in general, whether, we're talking about, the clinical space. I think, you have to have options in what are the different things. Obviously, the space is very noisy, and unfortunately, the marketing strategies of people is potentially what is the change in the world of why people purchase tests. And sometimes people are misinformed by what is said from a simple marketing message. The easiest one to go back to was basically Gary Brecker was talking about, and he's very, a very intelligent man and talks about some amazing things. And I really like listening to kind of some of the stuff he discusses. But he basically put a spin on basically what he does, which he was going, I do basically DNA methylation testing. He does not do, it's not completely true what he does, because what he's looking at and how he now explains it, because he obviously got picked up on it by a number of other partners and companies that work in this space, is he does a DNA test which looks at the methylation pathways. So it looks at the genes and at what genes are associated to that pathway, and that therefore gives you information about, I should take X, Y, or Z vitamin, for example. So I need to take a methylfolate vitamin, something like that. So that's great, because again, it's really powerful, and you still need to know your DNA. But basically, a methylation test is epigenetics, is you're actually testing how the genes are changing. Obviously, that kind of confused a lot of people, because he was going, yeah, I'm doing a methylation test. Not necessarily true. It's not a lie, because he obviously is looking at the pathway, but charging a lot of money. I'm talking $600-700 for a test that costs less than around £100. So we have a epigenetic test that costs half as much as his just DNA test, and his DNA test does kind of 10 areas, whereas our one does over 200 areas. And ours is, like I said to you, lot cheaper. So the marketing is, and again, that's in everything, whether it's buying a house, buying a car, buying clothes, buying shoes. You'll be influenced by potentially someone who you trust, you listen to, you follow. Your maybe your family do, or maybe one of your friends does, or maybe you've got a person who is a fitness person and they listen to, I listen to Joe Rogan, or I listen to this person, or I listen to that person. So whatever I say, they're going to do, because that's obviously what we have. We have people in our lives that we trust. So I think the biggest thing is around the marketing piece. We slightly positioned ourselves differently, as where we didn't go into the B2C world. MUHDO is a B2B partner. We work with partners all over the world, where we basically provide our platform to them, whether it's MUHDO branded or white label branded, or they have their own platform. We work with people to basically allow them to use our testing to help them understand, and work with what they already work with. We work with companies that do lots of different things. So again, you just need to understand how genetics can help people, because we work with hospitals, labs, pharmacies, clinics, different practitioners from IV, stem cell, CBD, supplements, trainers, gyms, even corporate companies. Again, corporate health is massive industry. So there's lots of different ways you can position yourself into the market. And obviously the technological piece, again, we have different methods of how we work with people. We have a platform which is online that allow practitioners to use it to basically interrogate information and then do consultations with people, because consultations are normally important, especially in the medical space. And we're very keen that when we give the data and the information, if it's medical based, there must be someone medical behind that delivers it. Otherwise, it's not delivered. We won't deliver that to an end customer, because we're not about scaring people. We're about here going, we're a prevention company. We're about health. We do look at the diseases in the background, but that's not a forefront to what we're trying to do here. We're trying to help everyday people to go, if I did this, that could affect this, which obviously overcomes this problem that I may have. Then we have an application. So you have a mobile application where you get your results, and obviously you can follow your journey. We have areas that open, so you can subscribe to certain areas that you can play different games, and you have different areas that you open up over a period of time to keep you engaged and try to help you on that health journey that you're on, which is why our business is B2B, because we work with a lot of partners that do that. They're looking at making people healthier. I use hospitals, for example. You go in for an operation and basically you're not really going to recover brilliantly from this, because at the moment, you're not as healthy as you could be. So we've now got 3 months, 6 months into your operation. So we're now going to do this test that's telling us that you need to do these things. So when you come to us, you're in a healthier state. You may be one of the big ones is like hip replacement, knee replacement, stuff like that, and you're overweight, and they won't do it because you're overweight. Therefore, the recurrence rate of needing another replacement is really, really high. So they're like, until you get healthy, or healthier, sorry, we're not allowing you to have the operation. And then also, the healthier you go into an operation, whether you're an athlete or a day-to-day person, the quicker you'll recover, and potentially the better you recover. But again, like with an epigenetics test, you have a metric before you go in. This is where I'm at. Good. When I come out, I need to be at least at that metric when I come out, and how quickly does it take me to get back to that metric? And yes, epigenetic testing is normally every 3 to 6 months, because it takes time for the body to make changes, but it's also about behavioral change. So it's about someone making change over time and sustaining that change, not going, oh, I've done this today and then tomorrow I'm going to do this instead, and it completely negates what I've just done the day before, because it doesn't work. Yeah, so hopefully that kind of covers off that question for you.
I want to just go back to the biological age. So there's more people now with all these different calculators that are available that are looking to reverse their biological age, like Brian Johnson. Mm-hmm. So in your view, what do you think it's the hype or worth the hype? And what do you think is truly achievable with the science-backed lifestyle changes that you are also implementing with your clients?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you use Brian Johnson, he's obviously completely to the other end of the spectrum, that's so far away from day-to-day people, because he's spending millions and millions of pounds on it. So commercially, it's not a viable option. Obviously, you do have a lot of high C-suite people who do have a lot of money, who are willing to pay for longevity, whether that's around actually having surgery. Obviously, people have a lot of surgery to basically look younger, rather than actually what can I do internally. Obviously, it's easy to have surgery, but obviously the key here is can you do the harder thing, which is actually make changes to the body that then help and support you moving forward. And again, it goes back to the personalization piece. We have what we call a bioinformatics platform. Basically, the bioinformatics platform interrogates data. The data basically from our testing. So we have DNA tests, we have epigenetic tests, we have lifestyle data, we have questionnaire data, we have cognitive data, we have face data. We have lots of data that we collect within our ecosystem. That information gets dragged into the bioinformatics platform, along with the research that we do with all the partners that we have. And then we're able to then look at that data and then make suggestions and improve our actionable interventions for people to kind of go, we know if you've got this risk, these are 3 to 5 things that you probably need to do and need to look at and embed into your lifestyle to make those changes. So it's different for everyone within that space. And again, obviously, I think the longevity space is kind of a little bit overcrowded, in the words of everyone's using the word longevity at the moment, and no one's really sure when you say longevity what you're talking about, because obviously people use it for skin, hair, supplements, and a number of other areas within health and science. Obviously, some people even looking at I want to extend my life, whereas we're not looking to extend life. We're not looking at lifespan in the sense of we want you to live to your 150, because there's no point in living to 150 if you're ill at 70, because the next 80 years you're going to live ill and put pressure on people and cause problems. Whereas if you're healthier for longer, then that's what so that's where the way we term it is we're looking at your health span and how can we help you be healthier. Obviously, there's lots of different ways to do that. Again, it goes back to the simple fundamentals. If anything, we know what they are. You know, if you look at yourself and go, I'm not happy, what am I doing wrong? You'll potentially go, I'm not eating correctly. I'm not doing enough exercise. And when I say exercise, I'm not talking about going to the gym 5 times a week or playing rugby or anything like that. I'm talking about you might need to go for a walk. You might need to go swimming. You might need to play some tennis or some paddle, or you might want to go to aerobics class. There's millions and millions of options to go and do to be active and things, yoga, Pilates, doing things with the mind, keep the mind going. That's why we in our app, we have brain games, because you obviously, again, your mind controls everything, and obviously your heart and lungs and your organs basically keep you going. So you need to look at how do I keep those stimulated, working, and enabling me to kind of, be functional as best as possible. So there's lots of different things that can be done. Again, I think it always goes back to, why have I done the test and what am I trying to improve? And then start there, because that will have a cascade of effects on other areas. Like I say to people, is always use caffeine as one. People go, caffeine doesn't have any effect on me, or I can't sleep if I drink it after this time, or I wake up and I drink it and it really wakes me up. Those are kind of how people use caffeine. Well, caffeine encodes for so many things. It causes anxiety, it causes stress, it causes gut health problems. It can improve performance, it can decrease in performance, it can improve recovery, it can decrease. It depends on you as a person. Because obviously people do things for particular reasons. Like, I don't drink a lot of coffee because of my gut health, because I know it causes leaky gut syndrome and causes me problems. So, I can drink it. I just choose to potentially drink something different, or I have it now and again rather than on a high scale. So it's again, everything's about taking things in moderation and understanding. If you have I think a test is the best way to understand yourself. And once you understand yourself, it's a lot easier to start making change.
Yeah, a test is the best starting point, and especially simplifying any intervention you're doing. So you don't need to go and run a marathon right now. You can just start with something small, start with a walk. So yeah, definitely agree with you on that. Okay, Wez, so just to give the listeners something personal from you, what is a practical action or a mindset shift that the listeners can take away today and is based on your work with MUHDO? Yeah, so what would you suggest?
Yeah, I mean, even if you take MUHDO out of the scenario and simply looking at just behavior, I always say to people is, unfortunately, in this world at the moment, we're very negative people. We're more negative than we are positive, and we always complain and we always blame others. So my thing is can you be positive? Could you, hold the door open for someone? Can you say good day to someone? Or you look nice today, or I like your shoes, or something like that, because you've sparked positivity, makes people feel better, obviously endorphins and stuff like that. So that's kind of a simple, being positive. If it's a negative situation, how can you make that situation a positive situation? So what is it that you can do to potentially go, well, that negative is there, but what actions can I take to make it positive? Sometimes I explain to people that you may have said something positive, so I could say something positive to you, but because of your knowledge, your experience, and how you feel about it, it's actually come across negative, and you get upset and angry because I've said something that you don't agree with. I don't believe I've said anything wrong, but the first thing I do is I blame you. I'm saying, well, I haven't said anything wrong, so it's your fault, rather than going, actually, I've said something first that's obviously upset you, or said something that is, whatever it may be to you, this isn't right. So maybe I need to look at me first and look at what I could have done differently to maybe explain my point, or whatever it may be that I'm trying to get across, so that I potentially get it to you in a positive term. Or I ask you questions to get the information before I give my point of view, which is what I tend to say to people is rather than go me, go, what about you? What about you? Get some information from that person to then help you engage with that person and have a conversation. And then the other thing, as we've already discussed, for me is simple going, I've got things I'm not happy with. So rather than complain about them, actually put actions into place and go. And if you don't have the knowledge, you don't have the experience, you don't know what to do, there are hundreds and thousands and millions of people out there that do, who can help you. And it may be a friend. It doesn't need to be a trained professional to help you. It could just be, I'm going to talk to my friend, and my friend may have an application or may have a method that may help me move forward. And by having that change in mindset of going, how do I action things? I want to achieve something. What have I got to do that? Because some things can cost a lot of money, but lots of other things don't cost any money at all. So it's kind of having that mindset to kind of go, how do I change from being negative to being positive? And that will have such a good impact on my life. And how can I be positive to people, outgoing? Because it helps. If you're happy, it makes things a lot easier. I know it's difficult sometimes. I know we have bad negative times. I know we have problems, we have stresses, but you've also got to look and go, I need to overcome that. That's a barrier. How do I overcome it? So when I have a negative trait, what has triggered that? And then how do I untrigger it? What is the thing? Like I said to you, it could be meditation, could be going for a run, could be going to the gym, could be I'm going to read a book, could be I'm just going to watch TV. I'm going to throw my phone away for the day, and I'm not going to have any social media, which is why people turn off social media. So again, it's very personal to every person of how they do that. But yeah, I'm all about trying to be as positive as possible, and then trying to help people understand there's really simple things we can do in life to make our lives better, but also people around us better.
And understand the people around us better.
Absolutely.
That is an amazing takeaway, and definitely something to use and think about more. So, and my last question for today for you is there one book or tool or practice or anything that has made a profound impact on your life recently?
I suppose it goes back to something I said earlier. I went down this kind of pathway where, because I'm one of the founders of MUHDO, obviously my business is kind of important to me. And obviously me being an ex-professional athlete, I still play at a good level, but going and stopping exercise was probably one of the most negative things I could have ever done. So what I basically did, and it sounds really silly probably to some people, but what I did is I started paying to go to like exercise classes. I basically started paying people to basically manage me, even though I've got all the skill set and I've worked at international level as a strength conditioning coach, nutrition, I'm an international athlete, I work in the health industry. I have all this information, but I started paying people to help me because I knew that I was accountable to that, because I had someone who made me accountable, rather than going, oh, it's okay. And, 3 weeks, month down the line, I wasn't happy. I knew I wasn't happy. And then it affected my personal life. It affected my work life. It affected my friends. I basically just shut myself off, which is what tends to people happen with everyone, which is when you say to people you just need to communicate with people, and there are people there that will listen and people there that will guide you. The problem people have is are you willing to take that action? And that's the kind of takeaway. I was just willing to go, I know if I spend that money, I'm going to do it. I know some people will go, well, if I've got a load of money and I spend money, that doesn't help me. Well, that's not your solution then. That was just my solution to my problem, which is I love exercise. I'm not doing it. I'm not enjoying it. I'm busy in work. What can I do to overcome that? I'm going to pay to go and do stuff that I didn't do. So I started playing paddle tennis. Brilliant game, really, really fun, really enjoyable. And I thank my mate who kind of introduced me to it. It was an amazing experience. Then started paying. I'm now doing high roxes, something that, is amazing. I love the community. It's a great community. Lots of people are doing it. It's a real cool event. It doesn't matter what fitness level you're at. You can just do it. But it costs a lot of money to do it. We're talking £100 just to do an event. But even on a weekly basis, you're paying, £15, £20 a week to do it. But because I paid that money, I'm going to the session. I'm doing it. And then it's giving me a positive outcome, which is I feel better. I have more energy, I'm happier, and everything else is slowly falling into place. But it's always trying to go, what makes me happy and how can I overcome the negativity?
I really like the way you use an incentive for yourself to go and do something that makes you feel better. Okay, so Wez, thank you so much for sharing your journey and the science behind MUHDO and also your practical takeaways. So these will help the listeners to improve our health and our longevity. And I really hope that the listeners also enjoyed this episode and found it just as insightful as I did, from understanding the real power of personal health to breaking down how DNA and epigenetics can actually guide everything from our daily habits to our long-term wellness goals. So if there's something in this episode that resonated with you, the listeners, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review and share this episode with someone who's ready to level up their wellness. Until next time, stay curious and stay well.